Hi everyone, welcome to the Movie Reception Show. I'm Fariba, and today I just want to do a review on Black Adam. I know that I haven't really done a lot of movie reviews in the last few months, and that's just because there's been a lot going on. Particularly, for one thing, we've had a lot of big shows that have been running with She-Hulk, House of Dragon, Andor. It's just been a really, really busy time, and it's just really hard to kind of keep things in check and just trying to get all these videos in. But now that some of these shows are really wrapping up and we're getting into the holidays, we're going to start seeing more of these big blockbuster films coming out. For one thing, Black Adam just came out last week. In a couple of weeks, we're going to see Wakanda Forever, and then I'm hoping that maybe very soon I'll be able to talk about Knives Out 2 or Glass Onions, just because I am super, super excited just to see that film. So moving forward, I will be doing a lot more of these movie reviews now that we're kind of getting to the more, we're kind of dimming down on the TV content as we're kind of getting to the end of the year. But yeah, without further ado, I just want to go straight into my Black Adam review. So basically, this is just like any other superhero movie, this is going to be based on the DC Comics. I'm not too familiar with Black Adam in general in terms of like his story from the comics, but from what I do get the sense of is that he is a bit more of a villain in the comic books, before really getting more into just the whole superhero-esque world. At least in this movie, he is more of an anti-hero who has a bit more of these conflicted views. His morality isn't the most ethical in a sense where, yes, he is a hero in a sense where he is going to defend his people, but also he has the approach that he takes into trying to get justice isn't the most moral way, or it's not the most right way, but in a sense. But from this movie, right, we get the sense of why he's the anti-hero and why people really, really champion him as some god that's going to save them. And in this movie, we see that there's a city called Kandog where there's an oppressive government that has been mistreating the people, the citizens of that city, and it wouldn't be until that Black Adam is awakened all of a sudden to really defend this whole city, I guess you can say. And not just that, but the fact that he is someone who's a bit more morally conflicted. He's not as heroic. His approaches aren't the greatest, and eventually you do kind of get the sense that there is something even more troubling with the fact that this is a godlike hero whose powers can be a bit spontaneous and it can get out of control, that we have the GSA come in and trying to maintain control, trying to make sure that he doesn't really, in a sense, cause a accidental wipeout of like a whole group of people. So that's basically the gist of that film. And just from what I've seen, from what I was thinking about this film, I think this is okay. I mean, it's not the most spectacular film or superhero film in general whatsoever. For one thing, there is really no plot. Just as I was watching this film, I'm just like, okay, what is really the plot of this film? And I mean, there is a plot in a sense, but it is so weak that it's not really the most it's not the most noticeable thing that you'll watch as you get through this film. I mean, there is a sense that, okay, this is Black Adam or Teth Adam, where he is just trying to do what he thinks is best for his people, because he knows he's felt the similar lack of freedom, trying to trying to fight for their liberty and all that sort of stuff, like not decades, but like centuries before reaching this whole period. But even then, the plot isn't really there. There really wasn't a strong plot. I mean, it's just like there's just so many things going on that it just doesn't really become as focused as you wanted it to be. And that's why it's like, okay, it's not the most superb superhero film that you would see. And not just that, but on top of this, I think one of the things I really, really had a hard time with this film is just the dialogue. Especially in the beginning, right? The beginning, as I was like listening to the dialogue, I would literally just mutter out and say, who even wrote this? Because some of the dialogue is so childish and just, it's just not the greatest. It's not really sophisticated. It's not really the most, it's not the greatest writing in general. Like some of the things that they try to say, they try to make things a bit more playful, but even then it's just kind of like it feels a lot more forced than really just being a bit more natural with some of the dialogue. And it just felt like, okay, at times I was kind of cringing a little bit, just because some of the things that were some of the things that the characters were saying were just like it just really kind of creeped up from your whole body and just kind of like, like, why are they saying these types of things? Why is the dialogue so unnatural? Some of the things that really caught my attention right away. And not just that, but in terms of this film, they tried to make it a bit more, modern in a sense, or trying to make it a bit more, how do I explain it, but try to make it a bit more not finesse, but in a sense of trying to be a bit more trendy in a sense, where they try to use some of these pop music that we've, some of the more popular music that we've had. Like, they even had a Kanye West song, Power, playing sometimes throughout the film. Like, they will try to put these hip hop music throughout the movie, but I just felt like they really were kind of forced, and it just didn't really fit in with the whole situation with the movie. It definitely felt like this is a film that they were just, I think the filmmakers were trying to have a lot of fun with, without a doubt, but I just felt like the way that they tried to execute it just kind of was a bit too much, where they tried to be, try to have the score as, trendy as possible, try to make it a bit more, I guess my generation with the Gen Z, and trying to grab their whole attention with like, oh, like, we're gonna have all these soundtracks, we're gonna play all these music in the background and all these action sequences, just try to, get you pumped up in the moment. But also it's just kind of like, well, when you have a really weak plot line and a really weak and awful dialogue, it's just kind of really hard to really take this movie as like a masterpiece in a sense. I mean, it's far from being a masterpiece. As a superhero film, it's just not the greatest. But even with all the negative things I do have to say, I think in general, even with the things I've said with like the weak plot line, the horrible dialogue, and just kind of some of the execution of how they really just try to show this movie, try to illustrate who Black Adam is, it may not have been the best approach to it, because again, I felt like there were I just felt like there was a lot of things that were really forced, and really trying to force himself, trying to be trendy, but it just didn't work out for this film. But even with that being the case, I wasn't totally off put by this film. I think one of the saving grace for this film is the fact that it is really action heavy. Yes, I mean, there's a lot of CGI. I mean, there's nothing you can go about that. But I think for every like 5 minutes of action that we get like 2 minutes of dialogue, which again is one of the reasons why there is literally a lack of plot, because it doesn't really, have a story in a sense where it makes you want to like feel for the character. But even that being said, I think the action sequences themselves really kind of saving grace of this film, where because it is so action heavy, that it does kind of it does get you a bit more pumped, like watching this movie and seeing how like Black Adam and even the GSA are really going into action, trying to, defeat Sabbac. And by the way, yeah, the villain is Sabbac, but yeah, and I think that was kind of one of the things I did really enjoy from this film, that even though it may not be a masterpiece in a sense where it has a story, it's not going to be like Christopher Nolan type of superhero film where we're going to have this really sophisticated story and just having like the right amount of action or anything like that. But even that being the case, I think that because it's a movie that's trying to be fun, that they do kind of, in a sense, elevate the action sequences to a point where you do enjoy all the fight scenes that do occur throughout the film. And I think that's one of the reasons why I did at least enjoy at least elements of the film, because the action itself was really what really kept you immersed into the whole experience and not totally made this whole film a dud itself. So for instance, like I think that even with GSA, they were kind of a really great addition, at least to kind of keep the action momentum going. I mean, we see Cyclone, we see Adam Slasher, we see Dr. Fate, and we see Hawkman. I think that they all, like, in some of the fight sequences that they do have in this film, while they're fighting against, whether it be fighting against Black Adam or Sabbac, there really were some creative takes on how they tried to do it. Yes, it is very CGI heavy, which kind of can get a bit more overwhelming. But even with that being the case, I definitely felt like that those were some of the scenes that I did enjoy, especially just even for some of the minor characters like Cyclone and Adam Slasher. In terms of the characters themselves, like, I think Black Adam is okay. I mean, I wasn't, even for a character who has one of the most heartbreaking storylines in this film, I didn't necessarily feel like I was totally into his character. They do somewhat redeem his character in a sense, or his character arc more towards the end, just giving us the idea of, okay, because of the fact that, you know, his own family was basically slaughtered by these oppressive people, that that's why he is the Black Adam, why he is defending his people, why he's, you know, committing all these atrocities, in a sense. I think that one of the things that you do get a sense of this film is just the whole themes of good versus evil, morality, and just discussing more of that. We see a lot of this contrast between him and the JSA, how he even has his bickering with Hawkman just to kind of, just to give his side of the point of the story and be like, okay, this is why I'm going to justify doing all of this. And sometimes if you're going to try and, you know, get justice for a group of people, you might have to take some, you know, sinister deeds. And we do see that throughout the film. Like, even by the time we get to the end of the film and they do face off with Sabbac, that in a sense Black Adam is sort of right, and like his approach to taking things, that sometimes you cannot save everyone. Sometimes, you know, taking the nice approach might not be always be the best, you know, direction for it. And so I think that it does kind of give you a sense of the big theme of evil versus good versus evil, and just the whole complications of the morality of how to approach things. And I think that they do give you a sense of that. Is it done great? It's not perfect. I think that, again, considering the fact that the plot line is very, very weak, that I wish that there could have been a bit more of a stronger way of just setting that up, but you do get a sense of that this is what this movie is going to be about, why it justifies who Black Adam is as an anti-hero, and that at least helps elevate who Black Adam is as a character, and gives us like, okay, because of all of this, it makes sense why he is an anti-hero and why it works in a sense of this universe that we have. Now, even with the fact that we do have like this really ambiguous character like Black Adam, as in terms of the JSA, or I'll talk about some of the more supporting characters in a sense that, okay, some of them worked, some of them didn't. One character that we do meet is Adriana and her son. I can't remember, I think her son is, crap, I can't remember his son's name, but we do meet Adriana. I mean, I think she's a okay character. I think that they do sort of utilize her in a better sense as than we would have expected from a supporting character. She is kind of the driving force of like trying to pull out this Black Adam character, giving Black Adam some sort of motivation to do the things that he needs to do to, you know, defeat Sabbac. And I think that it is somewhat effective in some cases, but I do feel like I think it worked in the beginning, but there's definitely something at the end of the film where I really was cringing, where you kind of have all this whole group of people just like fighting against like these zombies that, or these skeletal, you know, hell beings that come out of, you know, hell, and just like fighting them. There were definitely some cringy parts with that, and which I'll talk about in a second, but I think she does somewhat carry this film a little bit, just to like, you know, give us some sort of plot, which again, it's really weak, but it does help. I think her son was definitely one of the more weaker points that I felt like I just didn't feel for me. I just wasn't into it. Her son was basically like this, you know, superhero fanatic who is trying to guide Black Adam into becoming this, in a sense, superhero, but not the most like heroic, you know, quality of a superhero, or just having all those qualities of superhero. But even in that sense, like, I felt like he was definitely a character who really was trying to force a lot of things, like the comic relief and all that sort of stuff. And I feel like it just didn't work. A lot of it was just really cringe. I just didn't really feel for the character, and so that was just one of the characters I just kind of was like, okay, it kind of got a bit overwhelming, in a sense. And I think that, and I felt like I was a bit annoyed at sometimes, just kind of like, okay, I get it, you're really excited about the fact that we have Ted Adam and come and, you know, trying to defend his, you know, city for the first time in like forever, but like tone it down a little bit. And let's just go talk about the JSA for a little bit. If there's anybody in this film that I really felt like I really, really enjoyed, it was Dr. Fate. I think that he was a really, really intriguing character, and I think that has to kind of go back to Pierce Brosnan being an incredible actor and just like trying to give us an idea of who he is. Unlike the rest of the JSA, he's probably the most experienced superhero that we see in the JSA, just because he's been fighting for such a long time. He's been, you know, chosen to become Dr. Fate. And we do really see that. We do see the experienced and veteran, you know, like personality that he is in this film, and how he's been the guidance of just trying to push this younger generation to become better, and just trying to you know, give them a new world where there is somebody defending them. And I felt like he was, I think, considering the whole film with how they've been discussing about morality, evil versus good, that he's definitely the one who has really been taking a bit more complexity of just trying to discuss more of these elements. And unlike Hawkman, who was like always all, oh, we need to be purely good, we see how Dr. Fate is a bit more of a reasonable character who's like, okay, as much as the fact that we do have all this going on, that maybe sometimes Black Adam is needed just for, you know, certain cases. I think that I just think that with Dr. Fate, he was definitely one of the more intriguing characters where I just felt if there was anybody who I was like I want to see more of, it was definitely him. Just because, and not just because of the fact that, you know, he's kind of like a Doctor Strange-esque superhero. I know that Dr. Fate came before Doctor Strange, so don't come after me at that. But yes, we do see elements of him kind of performing all these Doctor Strange sort of, you know, powers where he's like doubling up himself, doing a whole, you know, what is it, doppelgangers of every person of him and whatnot, and just like using all these incredible powers, even having like his own sort of mirror dimension or mirror projection on the big screen. Like that was pretty cool. But not just that, but I feel like not just from the fact that he was really cool as a character going into action, but I felt like he was definitely a character who really just spoke out some of the most intriguing things, trying to keep you, you know, trying to keep you in a sense of understanding what's going on, and giving you a sense of, you know, the complexity, and keeping you thinking. And I think that he was definitely the more thought-provoking things about this film, of just understanding the whole themes of like good versus evil and all that sort of stuff. I felt like he was someone who I really wish I could have seen more of. And again, I think you got to give credit to Pierce Brosnan for really doing such a credible job of just showing who this character is and giving us an idea of like, okay, this is Dr. Fate. He's experienced, and if we're considering for someone who is an experienced character, like he'd be somebody who, you know, in a sense would be very wise but also really boring. But he was definitely the most interesting characters in this film, where I just felt like I wish I could have seen more of. And I won't spoil what happened to him, but definitely wish I could have seen more of him, because he was definitely the most interesting parts of this film, that I was like, okay, it's because of him that I didn't really feel like as if I felt this movie wasn't as uninteresting or as mundane as I would have thought it was going to be. I also felt like Hawkman was a pretty interesting character as well, because he does clash a lot with Black Adam. In a lot of that sense, it does give you a bit of this complexity. Again, it kind of goes into more of the details of good versus evil and how people, you know, showcase their morality and how they manifest that. And I think that he was definitely a bit more of the more interesting characters that really did sort of shine in this, and especially as like the leader sense of the JSA. So I did appreciate that, and I think Aldrich does a great job of really portraying Hawkman like as somebody who's a bit more straightforward, a bit more stoic, and trying not to, you know, and trying to maintain his more morality of let's not try to kill people, right? I definitely felt like if there were any characters that were a bit underutilized, it was Autumn and Cyclone. Autumn, I think, I felt like he was trying to come out as like a comic relief of this film, but and it's some cases it worked, some cases it didn't, but it was definitely underwhelming just to have this character who is like, you know, I'm pretty sure he's really big in the comics, and that's why I was like, when I saw him in this film, he was just kind of there. I mean, he wasn't really the most important character to really do anything. He was just there for the comic relief, and I wish that they could have done more of his character. Same thing with Cyclone. I felt like she was a really, really like, just to see just the powers that she can manifest, I was just amazed by them, and I felt like I wish they could have done more of her as well, like giving us an idea of who she is, understand what her motives are. I mean, I think that because of the fact that we do have this JSA team, that we don't really understand who they are, and I think that that's kind of where you see some of the more weaker points, and we see more of those issues being shown in characters like Autumn and Cyclone, where it's like, okay, we have this JSA group, but because of the fact that, you know, we don't have a really strong plot going on, that they were just kind of there for gimmick rather than just really just giving us a purpose of who they are as characters and allowing us to understand who they are as, you know, not just superheroes, but just humans as in general, right? So yeah, but overall, this is not a movie that I didn't totally hate. This is a movie that I felt like it could have done better, but also because it is DCEU, that, I mean, you kind of expected that it won't be the greatest film out there. It's have its playful-esque tone, and but for the most part, it is trying to be a bit more sophisticated, a bit more dark, grimy, and gritty in terms of like its own atmosphere. But even then, you can't really do that without having a really good plot, and I feel like the plot really really falters here, and it just really does try to do a couple things where in a more filmmaking style it just didn't work for this film. Like again, I mentioned about some of the music that they play, some of the action sequences, or the fact that there were a couple characters that weren't the best written characters, where they can be a bit more forced or a bit annoying at times. And then we have some characters who are just underutilized, that yes, they do have the potential, but they don't really shine in this film as much as we wanted them to be. But then there are a few that who do really shine, like Dr. Fate, Black Adam, and of course Hawkman. But I think that the reason why this movie wasn't a total dud, I feel like it wasn't total disaster, is the fact that it is really action heavy. I think that the action itself was definitely the more exciting bits of this film, where had it not been for just the action sequence itself, that this probably would have been gone a lot more awful than it would have been shown on the big screen. But I think that with the action, it does kind of keep you, it does keep you captivated, it does keep you engrossed with the whole screen, and it's just like, okay, we understand the whole threat that's going on. We do kind of sympathize with the city, with the people in the Kahndaq city, and why they need someone like Black Adam defending them. And we do, again, I think that it does at least highlight a bit more of what the theme of the film is, which is evil versus good, the morality of it, the complexity of just all of this, just how people think and what they want to do. And I think that that kind of helps a little bit in terms of just trying to keep this movie from, being a total, disaster, right? And if I were to really score this, I'll probably give it like a really weak 3 stars out of 5. Because I think that, again, I think the action itself really was what really kept me, captivated. Did really give me, it kept me entertained at least. But if you were to ask me if I were to watch this movie, I'll probably skip over any of the dialogue, just because just listening to the whole conversations and all that sort of stuff was just really really awful. And but at least the action sequences are something that you are looking forward to seeing. And of course, I guess you can say that there's a really big post credit or mid credit scene right after, with special someone showing up. It does. I think one of the things it does, I think that, again, I feel like that is a problem with this whole universe, is that it's tried to allude to the fact that there is a bigger universe, with the fact that there is a Justice League, there is Batman, there's Wonder Woman. We've had the Justice League film that happened. We have the Batman versus Superman. But the thing is that even in all of its attempts to really just put this all together, I feel like if it was trying to do that, it didn't really work. There's Amanda Waller who shows up, and it's just like, okay, but like, what's the purpose of it? What it doesn't really in a sense, it just doesn't really fit in so well in the universe. And I felt like it just, again, it played a part in why it felt so disjointed as a film in general, just trying to do so many different things rather than just like trying to determine like what this movie is going to be about, where its focus is going to be. And I felt like, again, this is a movie that could have had potential had it really just fixed this whole plot situation. But regardless of that issue, I still like the action sequences. That kind of was the one saving grace of this film, especially because for some of the sequences that we see, like Black Adam versus JSA, or JSA versus Sabbac, or Black Adam versus Sabbac, those were some of the things that I really was intrigued by. And if you want to see it, just go for the action. Just don't expect it to be the most glorious movie out there. It's at least if you're going to compare it in terms of like the superhero genre, it's far from being any decent superhero film. But I think that it is a really effective. I think it's really effective, at least in just trying to be a full blown action heavy sort of superhero flick. That if you were like a comic book fan who loves all these elements, that this is something that you're going to enjoy, at least in terms of this film. If you're not going to go in like thinking that's going to be like The Dark Knight. So but yeah, that's all I really have to say about this film. I think that it's decent enough. The action was pretty great. Some characters were great, some characters were not, and the plot and dialogue were just horrible. Let me know what you think. Have you seen Black Adam this past weekend? Did you enjoy it, or there are things that you did like, did you not like? How would you rate it? Did you personally feel like it was like the best movie of the year? If so, great for you. Or did you also felt like it was just a movie that didn't really have its own potential of being a great superhero film? How do you think about it in terms of just being, part of the general universe of the DCEU? What are some things that you did like, some things you didn't like? Who were your favorite characters from this film, and what were your favorite scenes? Let me know in the comments down below, and make sure to like and subscribe.